Jillian Mason.
And I am Benjamin Day.
And this is Medicare for All, the podcast here for everyone who needs healthcare. Welcome back, Ben Day.
It's good to be back. It's been a while. It's been a few months.
We've missed you so much.
I know. My personal life has been falling to pieces, but I'm piecing it back together. I'm ready to go again.
We love that. We love that for you. That is amazing. And it is just a pleasure to hear your voice again. So let me tell you about this week's episode. All right. So anyone who's been on the internet and wants to preserve their sanity knows one eternal truth. Say it with me, folks. Don't read the comments section. The comments, as we all know, are where our better angels go to die, where we forget our humanity and type out the ugliest, scariest stuff. Apparently, we were thinking all along. Well, today, against our better judgment, we are going to disregard best practice. And we're actually going to dig into what people are saying in the comments about healthcare content on the internet. Because how are we ever going to win over the people if we don't know what the people have to say? That being said, Ben and I were not willing to do that. So we tagged our researcher, Ashley Schultz, who is the most chronically online of all of our followers, with digging through the dregs of the internet. And she is here to talk about what she found. Hey, Ashley, welcome.
Hello. Thank you very much for having me. I'm very happy to come on here and talk about my chronically online experience in the comments section.
That is absolutely fantastic. Ashley, tell us first about your qualifications for this and how you approach this very scientific research.
Being chronically online is my qualification for this. I have been, for the last few years, like when I was growing up, I considered myself to be like the most leftist and progressive person in my family. I was not really on social media, and then for my job, I had to like become more active on different social media and realized I was really mostly like a centrist and I needed to do some self-education. So I hopped into those political spaces where people were arguing and read the comments for like the last 5 years. So
Oof. I'm so sorry for you.
Yeah. It's just like so much sympathy. What keeps you reading the comments even though you know that you're going to find terrible stuff there?
There is a lot of terrible stuff, but there are also a lot of people who are putting time, effort, and energy into trying to educate those people. And I think that's one of, like, you asked me to like go on there and look at the comments and tell us what they say. And it's like, I go on there and I get really good quality information from people on the left who are trying to educate and empathize and that kind of stuff. And then you get the people from the right who are basically heckling, you know? It's like, it's really hard to pull out one solid comment because most of it's just like, get a job, own the libs. And it's like, that's not really, you know, you can't really have like a full conversation about that because they're not trying to educate. They're not trying to like explain their point of view. They're just making noise because it makes them feel good to be obnoxious. So.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. I guess own the libs isn't really a conversation starter.
No, we have a different name for that. It's called all of Twitter.
Oh my God, I haven't been on Twitter in so long. I just cannot handle it. It's a bad place.
I have replaced Twitter with Threads, which has got the same basic, the longer it goes, which is like that Instagram replacement for Twitter. The longer it goes, the more it just feels like Twitter. You know, all of the same people have migrated over to those spaces, and they're all saying the exact same things that they used to say on Twitter before it went down the drain. So I still get my addiction fix from a different website.
That's a little bit scary, though, because it suggests that the nature of the internet is to devolve into trolling. So
could be true.
Keep that in mind as we move forward here.
We're going to be trolling each other by the end of this episode. But that's just
own the Ben Day.
Yeah.
So that sounds great. You got a bunch of different kind of categories of comments that you found these are mostly on things that were surrounding the, this, I throw up a little in my mouth when I say this, the big, beautiful bill. So a lot of these comments were around the cuts to Medicaid that just got made. Some of you might remember our earlier episodes where we were fighting those cuts to Medicaid. Didn't go so great. So Ashley, tell us. I think one strand of the comments that you identified was just about, like, just the idea of like not wanting to pay for other people's healthcare. What's up with that? Like, what are people kind of saying there?
It really just comes down to the idea that people just don't have any what feels to me like social responsibility. They are very focused on themselves and the fact that they get up and they work hard and they pay for their stuff and they shouldn't have to pay for anything for anybody else. And we're really focused on the healthcare thing here, but this applies pretty broadly to any sort of social programs. You will get the same comment about how I shouldn't have to pay for that, my taxes shouldn't have to go for that, for school lunches for kids, roads, public school in general, like anything that benefits the community as a whole. They absolutely do not think that it's their responsibility to pay for it. And I spent like days looking for this. I had saved at one point where it was a GOP politician, with his whole chest when they were talking about those Medicaid cuts, or all, not just Medicaid, like the big beautiful bill, was like, I've just always felt like it wasn't society's responsibility to pay for other people's kids. And I could not find it to find his name. If I find it, I will give it to you so we can put it in the description for the episode. But I mean, that's it. It's not my responsibility to pay for your kids. It's not my responsibility to make sure you have food or housing or healthcare. It's like, it's not that they don't think people should have those things. They just don't think they should have to pay for them.
Wow. It's funny how those same people never say that about the police or the army.
Right. True.
And I think they feel like they're getting something out of that, and that's just the perceived ability to like dominate other people. And they don't seem to make the connection that they're benefiting from like educating children by making sure there's future doctors and engineers, or that healthcare is a social thing, that preventing communicable diseases also keeps like their children safe. Like they're just not making the idea that this is an investment that you make into your community that you also reap rewards from.
Yeah, and even more basic level, I mean, universal healthcare it's not charitable. It's not actually giving healthcare to other people. It's insurance. It means all of us are buying and paying for insurance. And I know insurance is a very radical left-wing concept, but the whole idea of insurance is that if any of us get truly sick or face a serious injury, there's no way we could afford to pay for the full cost of care on our own, out of our own pocket. That goes for everyone who's making a sick comment on the comment section, right? So you buy insurance. That's what you do, and insurance works better the broader the pool is. It makes it more stable. It means that it just, that's the whole principle of insurance, is the more people you cover, the better it works for everyone. So I think people are misunderstanding healthcare as like, it's not charity. You're not paying for other people's healthcare.
Mm-hmm.
We're collectively paying for one another's healthcare. I think the opposition to Medicaid might be a little different, and this is why it is bad to have like different tiers for health insurance, like health insurance for the poor or health insurance for the disabled. It makes it a little bit too easy to apply this kind of logic. Whereas, countries that have Medicare for all, higher income people tend to care about the quality of the system and want the system to be better. They're paying in the same amount that lower income people are, more or less. So, So I don't know. I think it's a bit of it is a willful misunderstanding of how healthcare works. But
I'm glad you said that. Willful misunderstanding,
yes.
Right? No, totally. There's this this plaque in Boston on City Hall Plaza. I think it's a quote by Bill Russell, who was a sports person, correct?
Yes, legendary Celtics star, Boston Celtics star.
Very good. I don't know about his
civil rights leader as well.
I don't know about his sports ball credentials, but yes. I do know that he said this quote, which is, "There is no such thing as other people's children," which like is totally true, right? Like we take care of ourselves, each other collectively, because we survive collectively as a society, right? Like it's like, like Ashley was saying, right? Like we all benefit when people are healthier. I benefit when the cashier at the Stripes is not sneezing all over me so I don't get sick and then get COVID and then, whatever. Like it's selfish. we're doing this for selfish reasons. I don't want to get sick. Right.
This is why I don't read the comments, because I feel like at some point you find yourself defending the concept of morality. It's like, are we really there as a society?
Yeah, that's a really popular. It's like, I don't know how to explain to you that you should have empathy for other people, and it really feels like that's what it devolves into in almost all of these conversations. Like, do you not care at all about what happens to other people? And unfortunately, for a lot of them, the answer is like, no, they don't.
You know what, though? I'd like to. I'd like to speak to those people, though, because I kind of get that, like I have a dear friend who is a socialist, and, he's not like a touchy-feely socialist. He's not like we all love each other, this is whatever. He's like, I actually don't really care for other people very much, and I would like to not have to think about them. And so we should set up government systems that care for other people so that individually we can just ignore each other. And I think that maybe people who don't have empathy can learn from that, It's easier to ignore other people if they aren't constantly clamoring about not having rights,
You should start a new party. The Immoral Socialist Party.
The Immoral Socialist Party.
Yeah.
We coined it here.
I think one other thing worth pointing out is that we have a law in the U.S. that was passed under Republican administration that prevents hospitals from turning away people with urgent medical issues. Correct. And I think most people, regardless of their political ideology, kind of recognize that it would be problematic if you have a whole hospital, you have the capacity to treat someone, and they show up with a life-threatening injury, and you turn them away because you're effectively killing them, right? There's not a big gap between neglect there and murder. But I think if you extend that logic, which is not very controversial, to like primary care, the same thing is true. If you deny people primary care, you're also effectively killing them or taking years off their life. It just doesn't happen at your doorstep right now. It happens down the road years away. So maybe it's a little easier to neglect, but I do feel like the underlying moral principle behind shared healthcare is broadly accepted, but people just don't it allow themselves to rationalize not supporting it when it's not like right in front of their face, the consequences of your denial,
Which brings me to my next point, which is that when hospitals or doctors do have to turn people away, and when insurance companies deny, they should actually send them directly to the doorsteps of Republican politicians. I think, because if they die on your doorstep, then maybe it'll be more clear for you,
Yeah, and I don't mean to imply that hospitals don't turn people away, because they do, claiming that you don't have an urgent issue or that you shouldn't be you should find primary care somewhere. But and we have friends of the organization who have lost family members because of that. So it is a real problem, but still, yeah.
Yep. Oh man. So Ben, you were getting into a little bit about the idea of like so there are people who believe that we shouldn't have to pay for anything for anyone else, right? And then these are the people who don't want to share the bill for the appetizers at dinner. And then we have the people who have very specific people who they think don't deserve healthcare. And this is something that particularly interests me because I think it's crazy that people are willing to say out loud that other people should die. You know what I mean? All right. So Ashley, tell us a little bit, who are the people who don't deserve healthcare?
So you've got some pretty broad categories of people, right? And that's like elderly people, people with disabilities. There is a not insignificant portion of people in the comment sections that just don't think we should be funding like long-term care for these people and trying to keep people alive when their care is expensive, those kinds of things. It gets really ugly when you look at it like yeah, I just rather would not pay for that, and I think we should just like let them go. And then there is like categories of what I would say like procedures or certain things where it gets really into like the morality of things. Like They don't want to pay for abortion. They don't want to pay for mental health care. They don't want to pay for like addiction care or anything where they feel that the care needed is the result of that person's moral failing or something that they don't, a procedure that they don't morally agree with. They don't think that they should have to pay for that. Maybe it's a big government thing to make them pay for something that they don't agree with. It's like a government overreach.
Wow. I wonder where they get these ideas.
And lazy people. Lazy people is a big category, and this one is the one that they are using right now for in all of like their big Republican talking points. That's the thing that's going on Fox News and all of your GOP politicians. Is they just had yesterday or the day before a GOP rep from Nebraska that was doing a town hall. Where he's like, "Oh, that you want that 28-year-old able-bodied person who can work and chooses not to be able to have free health care?" And the audience is like, "Yeah." And he's like, "Well, we don't agree with you."
How many 28-year-old able-bodied people do you know who are on Medicare? Because okay. Like there's this, I think there's this like mythology and it goes way back, right? To who is the person who actually benefits from universal health care, right? And that person is always characterized as being lazy, probably fat, someone who doesn't want to find work, someone who would rather sponge off of the rest of us. I don't know. Just
the Cadillac Queen, right?
Yeah. The welfare queen.
Welfare queen.
Yeah. Frequently, people of color, right? I feel like the big, demon in Republican talking points right now is usually undocumented people, right? Which we can talk about a little bit separately, right? But this idea that like it's just so not true in my experience, and I wonder, where people get this idea. How are people able to believe that? We live in a community in South Texas that's actually pretty poor overall, right? Our city is pretty poor. And so a lot of folks are on Medicaid, and that makes sense, right? Because there are very few job opportunities here, and we have a lot of environmental health issues, and for so many reasons, right? It's interesting that people are completely unable to see their neighbors who they love, right? Who are benefiting from this. They just have that one picture in their head.
Right. And I think there's a couple reasons for that. One is, this is a deliberate twisting of things by Republicans where, if you can convince anybody that their neighbor is the enemy, then they're not noticing that you're picking their pocket, right? So they're basically weaponizing people being tired of working so hard for the little bit that they have, right? Because we don't have good wages and housing is so expensive, saying, the government's going to take more money from you. They're going to make it harder for you to survive to pay for that person over there who doesn't want to work as hard as you, and that's a deliberate framing. But also, like you said, we do live in a poor community where a lot of people are on Medicaid, but a lot of them don't know that they're on Medicaid because every state calls it something different, right? They don't call it Medicaid. It's Sooner Care or CHIP or Texas Star, or every state calls that program a different thing. So they don't realize their kids are on Medicaid. They don't realize that they're voting to take health care away from their children. I mean, this is conversation that people have all over the comments with that bill. People being like, I told my best friend her kids were going to lose their Sooner Care. And she said, well, that's not Medicaid.
Right. Sooner Care. Oh my God, they all have the stupidest names too. Texas Star. Yeah. No, totally. I think that's absolutely right. And I think we've talked about that before, Ben, right? This idea that they're kind of obfuscating Medicaid in a way.
Yeah. I think some of this is it's just kind of a healthcare is like caught in the crossfire of the widespread dehumanization that we see in the US. My wife is a social psychologist. One of the things she studies is how people dehumanize others. And they have all these ways of measuring dehumanization. It's very, very common, where we kind of gradually, characteristic by characteristic, describe other groups of people as like being a little bit more animal-like than human-like, or having less agency, or all these measures. And so you see a lot of that when you see the attacks on Medicaid, like the laziness attacks and things like that.
Yeah.
But I think, the other, we could also throw in some factual things here, which is that the vast majority of people on Medicaid have jobs. They're just jobs that don't provide health insurance. So the crisis of uninsurance is not, it's not like, it's not really an unemployment crisis. It's a crisis of shitty employers.
Exactly. It's an employer crisis. Yeah, totally.
Yes. And I always like to remind people too that we have this institution called the Federal Reserve, and their whole job is to make sure that there are enough unemployed people. If there's not enough unemployed people, they take drastic action to make sure that there are more unemployed people, because they think it's going to be a crisis, that it's going to cause rising wages, and that's going to cause rising inflation. So as a country, we do have a policy of structural unemployment. Yeah. So you can't claim that if you're unemployed, you're lazy. All the unemployed people are lazy and have somehow failed in their duty to seek healthcare. We have to have a system for taking care of those folks if it's a fucking national policy.
Absolutely. Look at you, Ben, coming in with the facts. This is why we like
facts here and there,
I'm just ranting. I'm already trolling. See, I've degenerated into one of the trolls already.
Hope you're catching on fast.
Oh man, whoosh. Let's talk also about the undocumented thing, because this also is a place where some facts I think are useful, right? Undocumented folks pay more into Social Security and get less back, right, than people who are documented, people who are born here in this country. They, for the most part, people who are undocumented are here in this country to work. Most of them are working on either a tax ID number or a fake social, which means that you are always paying into the tax system, but you are never taking out. So we have friends who have, parents who have been in this country for, 50 years, working hard, so hard, just working their bodies to the bone, right? Who will never actually get any kind of Medicare benefits, right? Who will never get any kind of Medicaid benefits. And so those are actually the folks who are propping up this system with their billions of dollars of tax money that they're paying and never taking a penny back.
Yeah, and that research has been done for Medicare too, and it's the same thing. It's the same thing as Social Security. Immigrants and undocumented immigrants are massively subsidizing the Medicare system. If we did not have the payments of immigrants and undocumented immigrants, Medicare would be insolvent right now for everyone else. So it's really ironic when people are like, I'm not going to put my tax dollars towards these people. Actually, these people are subsidizing you.
Yes.
So that's important to point out. Yeah. We just get a lot of that in the comments in South Texas, especially it's just going to be the undocumented people or whatever. Also, I think that people, especially down here, tend to underestimate the degree to which policies that impact undocumented people are also coming to impact people who are quote unquote legal immigrants to this country, right? So, people are getting snatched up whether they're documented or not, right? People are going to be denied care just because of their last name, and they'll have to work that out eventually, and hopefully they won't die in the meantime. Yeah. It is ironic. The whole MAGA Trump push to just deport everyone who doesn't have documentation. A, Medicare would collapse, but B, the entire agricultural sector would collapse as well, and we wouldn't have a food system. So you need to think these things through sometimes, even if you're just a purely self-interested person.
Thinking it through. That could be a good mantra, I think, for 2025, Think it through. Yep. But there's not a lot of thinking it through going in. And
if I could jump back to the work requirements thing too, because this is an interesting one as well.
Yeah.
Because there are several Republican states that have implemented work requirement systems for Medicaid. And they were all spectacular failures, even by their own criteria. Basically, it requires a tremendous amount of money. Well, there's two kinds. There's work requirements, and then there's documentation requirements,
Correct.
like having more stringent documentation requirements. And both of those have generally served to keep millions and millions of people out of Medicaid who should be enrolled, who are entitled to it, who are not, it's not like they're being caught and excluded. It's because maybe they're very old and they don't have access to the documentation that they need to, like birth certificate and things like this. Maybe they were involved in a natural disaster like Katrina and they lost all their paperwork. All of these things will exclude you from Medicaid. And in fact, right after Katrina, they changed the rules of Medicaid so that everyone in the area wouldn't have to show anything. They would just automatically qualify for Medicaid. But it costs a tremendous amount of money to administratively try and screen people for all this shit. And it turns out that it saves almost no money. Again, you are actually drastically increasing taxpayers' costs by these screening mechanisms. And you're basically not keeping anyone so-called undeserving out of the system. Yeah, it's all ideological, and it actually costs a lot more to do it than not do it.
Yeah, absolutely.
I think that really speaks to what I think is like the major difference between people that on the left and on the right is I feel like I would rather pay for 100 people that technically don't qualify than risk kicking off one person who needs it, whereas they would rather deny coverage or benefits to 100 people on the risk that one person that doesn't deserve it might get something that they don't think they should have. And they are willing to pay more money to prevent you from getting it than they would if you just paid you to have it.
Everything is very principled when folks get around to talking about why they don't like healthcare. And I think one of those principles is this idea of personal responsibility. And you found some really interesting stuff about personal responsibility and patriotism. I wondered if you wanted to talk a little bit about that, Ashley.
Yeah, I mean, personal responsibility as a whole is a big one. That's why they don't want to pay for things like abortion or addiction care. It's this is your fault. I don't want to have to pay for your health care if you're fat. I don't want to have to pay for your health care if you've been in an accident doing something risky. But I think, Dr. Oz, he's in one of those like upper level cabinet positions now, was talking in an interview about how you have not just a moral, but also a patriotic duty to be healthy, because if you're not, then you're a drain on the system. And it's like, this is, it really is that, they have a real, that pick yourselves up by the bootstraps kind of American myth thing that is really drilled into their head with like the work ethic. It's like, I would rather work myself to death than take, than have government health care or whatever. And it's just, it's a worldview that is really just wrapped up in that white supremacy and American exceptionalism, and it's a toxic brew that really causes you to like cut off your nose to spite your face. I would rather suffer than help someone I don't like, and it's perplexing to me on so many levels.
And it's really just the self-defeating nature of it is mind-blowing.
Yeah, I have a lot of thoughts on this. Well, I mean, one, Jillian, both you and I were living in Massachusetts when they passed kind of the precursor to Obamacare. It was the Massachusetts Health Reform Act.
Care.
Yes, Romney Care. And the whole premise of that was that you had a personal responsibility, so you were mandated to buy health insurance if you could afford it. But then your employers also had a responsibility, so they would have to cover some and they would have to pay for some in certain circumstances. And then the government would also take responsibility. And so that those three pieces, you place it together, then you're going to kind of get to universal health care. But it turns out that employers don't actually pay for your workers' health care. They take it out of your wages. So every time they pay more for health insurance, your wages go down. So employers are not actually taking any responsibility. That's our responsibility in addition to our personal responsibility. And then guess what? We pay for the government through taxes as well. So there was like this they were trying to create this illusion that there's like 3 pots of money or 3 agents who are going to be responsible for coming up with a universal healthcare system or something close to it. And it turns out there was only one responsibility, which is us, the screwed workers and unemployed people who are paying for everything. So,
it's all my money.
Yes.
God damn.
So there's this illusion of personal responsibility, which was really hilarious to me. But
yeah. I wish I could remember the statistic right now. I'll drop it in the show notes later. But there's for every dollar that healthcare costs go up, that like is like a 25 cents out of a worker's paycheck or something like that. It's like, obviously, we're not doing. They're not. Yeah, it's all our money. It's all our money.
And the other 75 cents come out of reduced hours and reduced.
Correct.
It's basically 100%.
Yeah. Oh boy. Yeah. So
I would say one more thing about personal responsibility, which is that it's not true that behavior does not result in health outcomes in a meaningful. A very, very small share of your health outcomes can be attributed to your behavioral choices. So there's a whole field called population health, and there's decades and decades and decades of research now that shows that your health outcomes, the thing that accounts the most for your health outcomes are actually where you fall, your status within society, essentially. That the lower your status, that the worse your health outcomes are going to be. And that is regardless of your insurance coverage. That's regardless of your personal behavior, whether you smoke, whether you drink, anything like that. And that accounts for the bulk of your health outcomes, usually mostly through stress, probably. Just the less control you have over your life, the higher your stress levels, and constant stress reactions tends to deteriorate your health across like a huge range of conditions. But then, so the smallest piece of the pie, though, then below that, of course, there's healthcare access and healthcare coverage. That accounts for a little piece of your health outcomes, but the smallest amount is behavioral, which accounts for a very, very small. So the whole premise that it's your responsibility, you have to be responsible for your health outcomes is false. So, wah, wah, wah.
Wah, wah, wah.
As Jillian would say.
Yeah, that is one of the smartest things I've said. Wah, wah, wah. I think I was going to talk about that as well, right? Like your zip code has a lot more to do with your health outcomes than, whether or not you choose to smoke cigarettes, and we can see that in statistics about things like lung cancer, even, right? Where groups of demographics that are actually less likely to smoke cigarettes are more likely to have lung cancer, and that I'm preaching in the choir here. So I like the idea, though, that this is like patriotic, just because it makes it anti-patriotic to be sick. And I kind of like that. I like the idea that being a chronically ill person makes me inherently like part of the resistance,
Subversive, yeah.
Yeah. I feel a lot.
It is weird.
Person.
I feel like for almost all the years that I worked in health policy and health reform, the wellness movement, the wellness movement is kind of, this is what they are. This is like, that essentially you can really dramatically affect your health outcomes by just making, really smart choices about how you take care of yourself and what you put into your body and what you eat and what you drink. This was always a loony group that on the left. It was all like New York liberals and shit who go to Whole Foods. And in fact, if you read any of like the Whole Foods stuff, they kind of buy into this, like there's kind of like a propaganda.
Yes.
By being a consumer in the right way and getting the right kind of stuff, you can dramatically impact your health outcomes. But now this like make America healthy again, convergence of wellness and the right is leading to some really, it would be fascinating if it weren't so scary. Because we would never have had wellness as a patriotic duty before this weird convergence happens. But now that's where we're at.
Yeah, it is. It is very strange. It's like the RFK of it all, right? Like,
Yes.
he's like, talking about like, chemicals in our food and stuff, right? Which like feels very lefty. And then, but he's also talking about not wanting. Um, he doesn't want. What is the latest thing? Oh, they don't want medicines for chronic illnesses. People shouldn't be taking medicines chronically.
Yeah, have you heard the thing about, we don't need antidepressants and ADHD meds, we just need to be reparented at these like weird camp things that they're talking about?
Oh,
Yeah,
wow. That's the camp we're going to end up in.
Yeah, I was like, at least I know which one they're sending me to. No, I think that really is rooted. It feels to me like if I was aware of a time when like the cultural consciousness shift from like the healthiness being on the left to the right, it was the vaccines cause autism moment that really rooted in these moms the fear of pharmaceuticals and those kinds of things, and started what I consider like the anti-science movement, that these doctors and scientists knew that these things were poisoning and harming our children, and they lied to us, and that was a strong pipeline for how we ended up where we were with COVID, and that was a real like pivotal moment, it felt like, because I had my oldest was a baby when all that stuff was going on, and I was terrified as a mom. Like, I mean, he ended up with autism anyways because I have autism, didn't know it. But like at the moment, I was like, oh my god, I'm like ruining my child. Like, they find you where you fear things. That's I think that's they get you where you're scared, and that's one of the places where people have a lot of fear.
That is very wise, Ashley. That is very wise, right? So like they're looking for places where you already have anxiety. Are you parenting correctly? Is your kid going to be okay? Obviously, people should have those kinds of anxieties, right? Because, if not, you get a bunch of boomers, right? Who produce a bunch of Gen Xers like us. But yeah, right? Like people should be anxious about their kids, but they just totally exploit that, right? And make the doctors and scientists like the nefarious villains in this plot. They knew, and they kept it a secret.
We were hating on Big Pharma long before they were here, so you can't just take that shit from us. And I hasten to point out, I think we have so much chronic depression, anxiety because of our government. I mean, look at the shit we have to watch on the news every day. And so anyway, they can't blame us for that shit.
Yeah, I feel like I should be sending Trump a bill for my antidepressants. Like,
exactly. That's the real wellness measure, would be to vote everyone out of office right now.
Yes, please register to vote right now. All right. So, one of the other things that we wanted to get to here is this idea that if other countries that do have universal healthcare, if they're doing such an awesome job, right, why do people still come here, right?
And this, that applies broadly. I think that they still have this belief in their mind of that America is this like shining city on a hill, and everybody wants to come here, and but specifically they are talking about like, why do they come here for healthcare, right? And we don't, now that they're defunding all of our scientific research, we won't anymore, but we did have some pretty cutting edge medical things happening here, and I will acknowledge that. But what they, I think, are not seeing is that the people that are coming here to access those are wealthy people from other countries, and that the poor people from America do not have access to those things. Like, if you spend any time on the internet, you'll be seeing constantly the GoFundMe's for just like basic healthcare. And then, mom groups on TikTok and stuff. It's, oh, my kid has a rare disease and I need to raise $6 million to be able to access this cutting edge healthcare that our insurance does not cover, right? It exists. We were doing good research, but we were not giving it to the people here to be able to, treat their illnesses.
Yeah, medical tourism, right, does not tend to go in the direction of people coming to the United States, right?
Right, yeah.
We know that medical tourism is actually something that's very common with Americans going to Canada or Mexico or other countries.
Yeah,
Like,
there's some weird ones. I mean, I would not have thought about going to Turkey to get my dental work done, or there's places where you can go and they do it as a medical tourism thing where you can walk in and they will do every conceivable test imaginable. They are doing ultrasounds and CT scans and just everything. They give you like a full health workup, and it's cheaper for you to fly to those countries, have everything from your teeth to your, scans done, and get all of everything fixed than it is to get basic health care here, because they have set it up that way. And these are fancy facilities. Like, we're not talking like developing countries with, I mean, those hospitals do exist, but I mean, these are set up as magnet places for wealthy people in countries like America to go and get the fancy healthcare that is inaccessible to us here.
Yeah. I'm sorry, I was just searching for plane tickets. Turkey seems like, I'm sure it's lovely this time of year. Yeah. We have, I mean, so many of our neighbors in South Texas are just, constantly crossing the border so that they can get access to prescription drugs and, medical care that they can't get here. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. Canadian,
Canadian,
when you're in Canada, they have universal health care. You get a health card that you take with you if you go to the doctor, if you need any medical care. And it used to not have Canadians' photos on them, but it became such a widespread practice that Canadians would lend their health card to Americans to fake being them so that they could get access to health care, that now all of the Canadian health care cards have their photo on them.
That's
what a bunch of moochers we are.
Like, is that personal responsibility, right? Like, we're gonna go and yeah.
Yeah, and there's a moment, maybe we can link this in the show notes, but there was a Canadian doctor, Dr. Danielle Martin, who testified before Congress on Medicare for All, and was asked this very question by a Republican congressman, and she had the most epic takedown of this argument. I mean, she had an answer to all of it. I remember he was talking about a particular Canadian minister who had allegedly gone to Florida for care, and she was like, no, Canada actually invented that procedure first. So, and yeah, I mean, why would anyone want to come to the US to pay more money for care?
And that all of that is disregarding things that Ashley was mentioning at the beginning, which is that we are no longer funding that kind of research, right? Like the research advances that we have in the US, whether they be in pharma or in just overall health research, right? That stuff is all publicly funded. So right. RIP. It was publicly funded. So now, even those people who are like, well, we have the most advanced medical care in the world, enjoy that for the next 5 minutes, because medical care is always evolving and we are not going to be on the train with it.
No, they just saw yesterday, I think, that RFK Jr. had canceled funding for the research into the mRNA vaccines that gave us the COVID vaccine, which was really had some very promising research, even in things like being able to specifically target like your cancer tumors. And I mean, we were poised on the edge of making some really, really exciting breakthroughs, and they've just set us back decades.
What was the quote? Womp, womp. Oh, man. Yep. So there's that. God, guys, this is so depressing. All right.
We pick up this podcast. Let's turn this around somehow.
Let's bring some energy here. So, all right. We've got all these people in the comments, right? And they're not us because we would never write those things. And how do we talk to the people in the comment section? Like, how do we reach the people in the comment section? Should we try to talk to the people in the comment section?
Well, I think that first we have to understand how they got where they are. This is the result of several decades of very intentional targeting by the Republican Party,
Right.
especially in rural areas. You can go all the way back to Reagan and his, the scariest words you can hear, I'm from the government and I'm here to help, right?
Right.
That they've seceded this very intentional suspicion of the government and authority in general, scientists, whatever. So these people are coming often from a place, like I said, of fear. They recruit in places where people are having anxieties or vulnerabilities, whether that's like moms and vaccines or young men who are feeling kind of like out of touch and unsure of what they should be doing. They prey on you in those anxious moments, and a lot of it is fear. It's fear of their own financial situations. I can't afford to pay any more taxes. I don't have, my family is already struggling. I'm having a hard time paying for childcare. I'm having a hard time paying for housing. I'm having a hard time paying for gas to get back and forth to work. And now you want to tax me more to pay for somebody else's stuff. They have to get a job and pay for their stuff because I can't afford to pay for anything else, right? And it does come across as really callous, but when you're in a place where you already feel precarious, it does make sense to think of yourself first, right? Yeah. And I feel like that's intentional. That's part of the reason why the Republicans fight back so hard about doing things like raising minimum wage. They want them to feel afraid and unsure financially, the same way they want them to be afraid and fear the government, right? So first of that is understanding that it sounds really bad, but these are very, very scared people. They are scared of anybody that's different than them. They are scared of not being able to feed their kids. Like, it all comes from that sort of insecure place that really makes it hard for them to feel empathy for others, right?
Yeah, that's a really good point, right? Like, even if you're doing pretty well in America, right? Like, I'm a kind of a middle class lady. And I'm white, and whatever. My life really sucks, like I'm sick all the time. I can't get the healthcare I need. I have student debt. Whatever. Like, they've rigged the system so that we're all really fucked and alienated, right?
Yeah, and it keeps us fighting each other, where we feel like we're fighting over scraps of resources. And I think we do often come down to, like, how can I convince you to have empathy for other people? And when people feel like they're drowning, they don't care whether you're drowning. They're just trying to save themselves and their families. So I think there needs to be a bit of a shift between, away from think about other people to, did you know you would pay less money overall for your healthcare if you cut out insurance and just paid the government directly? Because you would not be paying those healthcare people make billions of dollars. That's why that guy got Luigi, because this is a billionaire who is denying this man healthcare coverage and won't pay for his services. Is to say this is how much money you could be saving while still accessing medical care that you can't currently access. We have to explain to these people that it's not just benefiting others, it's also benefiting you. You are going to see an improvement in your life circumstances by raising the minimum wage and paying for health care and paying for universal child care. Because if they can't see the way that it benefits themselves, they just don't, they're not going to be able to care about the way that it benefits others.
So get them in the old self-interest.
No. And this is why Democrats are losing, because Democrats want to do all those things, but they will not pay for it by taxing the rich.
Right.
So it becomes an impossible argument to address what you're talking about right there. Yeah. So
yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah. When you're not willing to say, when you're not willing to actually create a villain in the story, it creates a vacuum. And that's where people start to fill in their own kind of more, I think, provincial fears, right? Fear of the person next door, fear of the person in the next country, fear of the person, yeah, absolutely. Absolutely.
So how do you respond to the people in the comments? I'm not going to respond to the people in the comments. I'm barely online, but yeah.
I am not a fighter in the comments. But those are the talking points that I use with my conservative family. People that the people. I don't think you win those fights in the comments. Like, I really don't. I think that everybody. Those are conversations that involve a lot of nuance, and that you should really be having face to face, because, like I said, they show up in the comment sections to heckle. They are not there to learn. They are not there to have a conversation. This is stuff information that you need to get from somebody that you trust as an individual, that you can ask questions and kind of show your ass about, and have them meet you at a place of, listen, I hear you. However, You need to be able to honor their fears and their worries and their concerns. And
Yeah.
I don't think that's a role that everybody is going to be able to play in the resistance. But I think if you have the emotional capacity to have those difficult conversations with the people that you work with or whatever, that it's worth the investment to say, let's chat about it, because that's a long-term conversation, because they have been really indoctrinated over many decades of hearing these same messages from Fox News and whatever, and it's going to take many conversations and a lot of listening to be able to sort of change their minds. I don't think you have the time or the ability to get into it in the level you need to in the comment section.
Yeah. And we know statistically, like based on all the different studies of persuasion that we've seen, that you're much more likely to be persuaded by someone who you're in a relationship with than someone who who is a stranger, right? You have a almost 0% chance of convincing someone who is a stranger to you in the comments who's like, own the libs. And you're like, there's no such thing as other people's children. Right? Like that, that conversation isn't going to work, actually.
Yeah, because when I first started this, I showed up intentionally wanting to learn. I knew that I was not as leftist as I thought I was, and I was like, okay, I'm gonna have to do some introspection and figure out where I am wrong. And even though I was showing up really open-heartedly and trying to educate myself, there was still a lot of times where I was like, ooh, like, that would hit me. Like, I don't know about that. Like, I really had to sit with some stuff for a while to feel like, okay, and it's just, you get that immediate sort of defensiveness, and it is a long sort of unboxing process.
Yeah.
I mean, we have sort of a standard answer to this question at Healthcare Now, developed over many, many years, which is to tell your own story, and that is the most effective way, and it kind of diffuses that defensiveness. But can you tell your story in a comment section is a challenging and difficult question.
I think it's kind of a combination of the two things, right? It's like, meet these people outside of the comments section and then tell them your story, right? But I do appreciate folks who are trying to, and I have actually seen you on Facebook, Ashley, trying to educate folks in the comments, and I do appreciate that. And I think that you've had some impact on some of the folks that we're around on a daily basis, and I think that's really cool.
I hope so. I mean, I feel like I owe a big debt of gratitude to the people who have selflessly shown up online trying to educate, because I feel like I'm a very different person now than I was 5 years ago, and I would not be where I am if there hadn't been people who were willing to say, listen, you're saying dumb shit right now, but let's have a conversation about it. I'm like, I'm going to argue with you, even though you're very irritating. So, I mean, I don't argue with them, but like I see them arguing with other people in the comments. I'm like, I take in their bits of wisdom and have learned and hopefully improved myself. And I hope that I continue to do so. And I try to pass that along to the people in my life who are not there yet.
We're all going to get there eventually. Right?
I hope.
Right?
Yeah.
Really?
No, we're going to get there eventually, either by through love or through fear. And I think that actually that's another important lesson, right? Like, so when we tell our stories, like, I think we are like kind of reaching out through love, right? We're saying, this is who I am. Like, I'm a person. Connect with me as a person, right? But I think that the other thing that we need to remember is that, the Republicans recruit people by meeting them at the place where they're afraid. And I think that we have to be able to meet people at the place where we're afraid, because we actually have real solutions to the things that they're afraid of, Yeah.
They are outpacing us in recruitment, and that's scary. Like, we need to have, they had a plan for how to meet people where they were and in those spaces, whether that's like, and then they recruit in specific communities, the crunchy moms and the gamer kids, and they know where those people are at, and we need to figure out where they're at and be a counter voice, or we're going to lose our asses.
This gives me a brilliant idea, Jillian. I think we need to create a Medicare for All AI bot that will post very compassionate, well-informed stories on comment sections all over the country, and bring everyone to the light.
All right.
Can you pitch this in a foundation grant?
if you're listening to this and you have the capacity to create such a bot, I don't know what that looks like. When I imagine like assembling a bot, I imagine like assembling out of like stuff I find in my kitchen or whatever, you know, like
I'm sure it's exactly like
colander for a head and boop, 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 boop. No. So yeah, if you are listening and you have the capacity to create a bot that targets, who are they? Crunchy moms and gamer kids.
Yes,
with
please.
Compassionate stories about Medicare. I think we've solved the problem. And with that, I'd like to wrap it up because, you know, you can't go further than the solution. Oh my gosh. Ben, it is so good to have you back. Thank you so much
so
for
good to
being
talk to
here.
you.
Oh, I miss you so much.
Me too.
And Ashley, it was a pleasure to have you on. And thank you so much for doing the hard work for us.
Thank you for letting me come on here and yap to you. But at least now I don't feel like all the last 5 years have been wasted. I got to put some of that knowledge and use it for good.
Fantastic. I love that. Awesome. Well, so thanks to both of you. Thank you to our podcast team and specifically our audio editor, Craig Stanton. Remember to like, subscribe, comment, and share with your friends. And remember that this podcast is a project of the Healthcare Now Education Fund. You can support the pod by going to www.healthcare-now.org and click on the donate tab to send us some love. Thank you so much, folks, and stay safe and stay dangerous.
Later, y'all.